Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Senior Pastor Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. I'm your co-host, PJ, along with Matthew, and we are virtual, digital, on the cloud today. So I'm coming to you from Tipton County, Tennessee. So actually, more specifically, Brighton is where I'm currently sitting, and that's kind of like my home kind of county. So I haven't been here, in a long time. So yeah, I'm here. My brother and I, we are bringing our dad back to kind of close out some things, accounts, and go through storage sheds. And so it's been fun. So we're doing that right before Thanksgiving next week. So, but Matt,
welcome home.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's T County, baby. T County. It hasn't changed much. We went to Olympic Steakhouse yesterday. That was around when I was a teenager. So I'm sure since then they've added a McDonald's, a Burger King, and all of that fun stuff. But nevertheless, I'm back at home.
So how small a town are we talking about? Like you can count the stoplights or?
Well, I mean, we did. So growing up, we didn't have a stoplight in Mumford, but I mean, there's a major thoroughfare like Highway 51 so it's like a 4-lane highway. So you have some stoplights there, but in terms of the actual town, we didn't even go back into town. So we're asking, should we just drive around and just reminisce? So we haven't decided that yet, but
yeah, you got to do that. Yeah, that used to be there, and that used to be there.
Yeah. Awesome. So there's a Burger King, but it's called Our King now because the lights are out. So, yeah, it's like I want to change your lights. Yeah, put some new bulbs in them. So
you got me for a second. I was like, they really changed their name? Oh boy! All right.
We used to have a. It was called Bumpers USA. It was like a Sonic, like it was, and they actually did roller skate. That Bumpers is no longer there though.
See, you're old. They had roller skates.
Wow, man, I'm really shocked of how some of the things have been able to stay, but it is kind of like a timestamp in the past. Because I mean, sure, there's some new, like little newer things, but not a lot. I thought there would have been more.
So how long has it been since you've been back?
At least 2014, because that's when my granddad passed. Okay. So now I've been in Tennessee, like before, but I mean since then, but not Tipton County.
All right, so let's dig into Word to the Wannabe Wise. This week we're talking about friendship.
Yep.
Yeah. So what was interesting about this is the Facebook poll actually chose this sermon, this topic, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I want to say 65-70% of people. Like, and we had several hundred, 300 plus, I think, at least.
So did you already have plans of sermons for all those topics, or did you?
No.
You started from scratch when you found out?
I had sketched out a long time ago because I did think about the topic friendship. I thought it would be something that would be relevant for people. So I had sketched out something, but nothing deeply. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was kind of fresh.
Yeah, that's a little nerve-wracking.
Well, like starting for fresh?
Just not, how long ago was that? A week and a half before?
Yeah, it was just a week and a half before. Okay. Yeah. So it was. Yeah. I mean, so, something like in Proverbs, though. I mean, there, it's not like them choosing Revelation, where I'm like, okay, gosh, that's going to be a lot of study there. So,
sure. So it was safe. I see.
It was safe.
So this was November 16th and 17th, and And the main point I saw is the goal is to unpack biblical wisdom on friendship, deep, close friendship. And the outline we had, you started with laying out these 5 categories or kinds of relationships. You took us through 6 proverbs. We did a definition of biblical friendship. Then we dug into these big 3 categories to unpack. We looked at obstacles to biblical friendship. We looked at markers, and then we also looked at outcomes, and those are the results. So let's kind of dig in. What was interesting about this first 5 categories and kinds of relationships, and you talked about this a bit in the sermon, was you had family, you had spouse, you had friends, neighbors, acquaintances, community, team, tribe, and then friendship. So friends were actually separate from friendship, and friends were in the same category as neighbors and acquaintances. So is that a concept you had known about prior? Or is that a concept that you just kind of?
No, that was, I mean, literally that was new for me.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, through a couple of different sources. I'd listened to a message that Tim Keller, preached years ago when, and then even John Piper, talked about how the Hebrew language basically has one word. I mean, there's another word, shavir. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Chaver. And so you'll see that sometimes, but Rhea, Reeh, something like that, or it could be Re, or you could pronounce it. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I did stay at Airbnb last night, so. But yeah, so they and a couple others, just talked about how there's this, just kind of this general concept of friend. It could also be neighbor, companion, and you do see that throughout Proverbs. But some of these passages in Proverbs, they go deeper into the idea of like friendship. And now, not everybody. So here's the thing: not everybody uses that kind of differentiation. A friendship.
Sure.
But they do. But people do unpack. If you really want to be a biblical friend, like Tim Keller, he did one and a message, and I'm trying to remember his 3 points. But one of his points got into. You need constancy, you need candor, and so I use carefully candor because I'm like the way he broke it down. I'm like, I think you're just kind of building it. I don't know if you have to differentiate that or distinguish that. So let's just add that together. So that was one of his markers was candor, and then careful. He dived, or he kind of dove into a deeper understanding of friendship as some others did. So that's kind of where, for the first time, I'm like, oh, okay. I think there's something to.
Well, and I thought it was interesting that you define friend as the neighborly disposition you should have towards all people you encounter that adds functionality and flourishing to their life. And this idea of friend being connected to acquaintance and neighbor almost feels like our new social media definition of friend, where you're acquainted enough to accept yes when they say add friend, right? But that may be all there is, but there's at least some sort of acquaintance, as opposed to we used to always, I think of friend in more of the friendship terms, right? There was this, so I feel like there's been this redefinition. You wouldn't really call somebody friend unless they were close. So I do think it's important these days because that word friend, because of social media, gets thrown out so often.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's where I think people want to know a little bit more about friendship. I wrote down some more levels. You got neighbors, acquaintances. So neighbor, you might live in a neighborhood, you might live in a subdivision. So they're kind of your neighbor. Maybe you have an office neighbor, in the sense of across the cubicle that, again, you see. But then you have acquaintances. So that's kind of the first level of kind of a friend. Like, hey, like you say hi, or maybe maybe you go out occasionally, but they're acquaintances. We know them. We know general information about them. Then you have friends. Hey, hey, I would say he's my bud. He's my friend. We talk. And again, I haven't dug deep, but I was thinking about, hey, let me share a little bit, maybe more about maybe some even levels. Then you have like good friends. And then best friends, and that's friendship, from a biblical standpoint. So you have like neighbor, acquaintances, friends, good friends, but then kind of best friends. And so, and that's kind of where, I mean, in terms of best friends, friendship, that's what we unpacked this past week. Is what does it look like to really have a best friend? What does it look like? Yeah, and really, you can't have a lot. Now, you might have a lot of friends. You might even have a lot of acquaintances. So like for me, pastoring, sure, I have a lot of acquaintances. And then also have a lot of friends. But and that's where for me, like I get a little overwhelmed because I want to be friends with the governing elders. I want to be friends with the senior staff, the executive staff. But when I start adding all of those up and looking at my and then I want friends in the church too. I mean, I gotta quite. And so that's where for me it gets overwhelming. Because I can't manage all of those relationships. And then we look at good friends and then best friends. I mean, that's a lot of margin. And so, and I think that's where I hope and pray that this particular message gave some framework and some freedom for people. It's like, hey, listen, you don't have you don't have to be good friends. You don't have to be best friends with everyone. And then also don't get your feelings hurt if it's not reciprocated, because there's a good friend, there's a best friend, there's a friendship out there for you, and you just have to be diligent in finding that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the framework that you laid out and your example of being, acquaintances, at least acquaintances with so many people, right? And then trying to be friends with so many people, I think is a great example for all of us, because for one, it helps to explain. It's hard for you to explain that to the congregation without this framework, right? Because they immediately, well, why, right? But with this framework, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But then every single one of us is able to, like you said, that freedom because we are called to your definition of a friend to have a neighborly disposition, right? So that is so freeing to be able to say, like, yeah, I want to be like really kind and really display Christ to everybody I come in contact with.
Yeah.
But it's never practical for me to have biblical friendship with that many people. And I agree that idea is very freeing. It's also very challenging, because the way you ended it was really hard. So it's kind of a balance, because you're like, okay, we don't have to be friends with everybody, but man, this idea of biblical friendship is hard to do, and it's hard to find.
It is. And I remember years ago, I mean, shows you kind of the circle I grew up in. Jerry Falwell. So he was the chancellor at Liberty University. He was really the visionary behind what Liberty is today. But I remember him preaching a message, and he said, if you die with 3 close friends, you die a wealthy person.
Wow.
And like this, he just said 3. I mean, and I'm like, okay, well, and unpacking this, I'm like, yeah. So if you had 3 like best friends that, like, you could say, I mean, they'll give me the shirt off my back. I mean, they're there for me. I'm in so you die a wealthy person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. And I think the older you get and more longevity, and more time, and more life that happens, the harder that becomes, and the more realistic, the more that's put into perspective, right? Because when you're in your 20s, it's easy. Oh, I've got all these friends, and you can even have, especially in college, some deep, rich friendships. But as there's separation, as there's time, as their life happens, it's really hard to find those friends that have that longevity, or even just spending that time to do that.
Yeah. And, a couple of things that even come to my mind. I know that we've all been hurt by people that have been our friends. And I've been hurt by people that have been my friends, and I've definitely considered good friends or even friendships. And so this isn't a Teflon case where it's solid and you can't pin it. But I do think, though, this framework gives you some mile markers to be able to understand whether or not someone is a safe, good friend or a safe friendship. Because not all friends are safe friends, meaning that you can confide in them. That they can receive and digest sensitive information that you give them about who you are. So this gives you, and then also I hope it does, help people that, okay, maybe you have some good friends and friends that don't believe like you, but listen, if you're going to really dive into biblical friendship, they do got to be on the same page with you. From just a biblical perspective, or they're not going to be able. Now, again, maybe there's different levels of friendships in the sense of, hey, this is my atheist, friendship. I'm still hesitant with that. I still think you can be good friends, think you can be friends, but you need somebody to be able to speak into your life from a biblical accountability and go and be able to get in your grill in a sensitive way, and they're just not going to do that, So I think this hopefully gives you gives people a framework to help understand the full out development of a friendship through the eyes of the Lord. And really going back to how I ended into that divine friendship that we actually have with God, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it really was. As you were building the case for what true biblical friendship was, and I was feeling the weight of how hard that is to find and how hard that is to do. I was it brought me to an appreciation for what and who Jesus is, because I'm like, man, even if we find ourselves in despair, lonely, and even if we do have good biblical friends, they are going to fail us. There's going to be hurt, but we have one that won't.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. It's incredible. So it's although it could have very much been a challenging message for some, a freeing message, I think the way you ended it was very hopeful, hopefully for all of us.
Yeah. Like we have one. We have one in Jesus. And if we can receive that friendship, and I think the biggest thing, too, like when you think about the difference between friend and friendship is this idea of choosing. And so again, you can be friendly, friends, acquaintances, neighbors with all, but friendship is when you both say yes. Yes, and Jesus has said that to us through his death and resurrection, and wanting to impart to us his nature and then also his spirit. And so, but we also have to then reciprocate that and choose him, and then be, and I say in some sense, be to him what he's already been to us. Now, Jesus doesn't need counsel; he doesn't need our advice, but we can be now in this friendship because we've chosen him.
Well, and as you're saying that, I think that it adds a richness and a depth to the idea of I have a friend in God. Jesus is my friend. Even that song, we used to sing at Northland a long time ago. Sometimes as I was singing it, it just felt hokey, right? And I think part of it is not digging into the depths of what that means, right? And how, all of these things really help to differentiate the amazing reality that he is our friend and not just an acquaintance, not just a neighbor, not just a friend on Facebook, right? But he's our Savior, and then some of those ideas of choosing and proximity are just really, really they come to life when you when you put that in your relationship with Jesus. So that was the idea of friend. And then for the definition of biblical friendship, he said it's the vehicle God uses to help us function and flourish in our humanity, how we relate, create, and operate. And you keep coming back to that.
Yeah,
You're not going to move on from that idea?
Well, no. I don't think the Bible moves on from that idea. So why would I? And I think that's part of the. So I really believe that's part of the issue with pastors is that we feel like we have to move on to a new concept, and we don't have to move on to a new concept. Let's hit that and let's drive it home. We have been created in the image of God to reflect Him in all spheres of life, and those three big buckets. I mean, I could take the 5 of be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. But I'm trying to bring it to life in the 21st century of some words that we might use, like relate, we create, we consume, but then operate.
Yeah.
But why? Yeah, I don't know why. And again, I don't know where I would go. Why would I move on? Because that's where friend's going to help us, with that. And yeah.
And I say that jokingly, but I say that because, like you said, it's a reality, right? And I think that's our tendency as humans. We do this for a while. We have to do something new and fresh, and like you said, well, where would I go to? So to finish that thought, biblical friendship is the vehicle God uses to help us function and flourish in our humanity, how we relate, create, and operate, as we traverse through the sea of life on our way to eternal life. So you got to be creative. You got to draw your boats and your people and.
Yeah, I guess you can call that creative. So, a creative genius on Canva. But see, I like that stuff. People give me. I do have some close people that give me a very hard time with my.
Do they?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I'm not a. Yeah, I didn't go to school for that, but I know that people are visual, and so if I and again, this is part of my my humanness.
Sure.
So hopefully my gift is communication, but one of the ways that I want to try to communicate is through images, and so. So that's where I try to create that, and I'm grateful for technology that allows somebody like me with limited, kind of the limited capacity in that regard. That hey, I can at least put some things together, and at least people visualize. So
yeah. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is that carefully? Is that really candor there? Are you truthful?
Is that careful candor?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I think so. I don't know if that's wise counsel, but it may be careful candor. All right. So let's look at these, the 3 big categories. First is the obstacles, the barriers. We had distrust, growing apart, time, busyness, distance, sin, laziness, and then you added one, being uneducated. I think all of those were powerful in different ways. Certainly, it's broad enough that I think we probably all had things that came to mind when you talk through, those. Some more than others, right? I think if we were especially hurt by a really close friend, that one's probably gonna overtake the whole list.
Yeah.
I think growing apart is pretty applicable for married, early stages of marriage and having kids after college, 20s, 30s. That one, definitely felt that one through the years and the reality of that. Distance as well, right? So I went to school in Virginia, came back here. I had one real good close friend. The reality is, because of distance, it's just not it's just not a reality anymore. And then growing apart because of time, business. So you see how these really can work together.
Yeah. Well, and just to remind people, I mean, again, these are barriers to friendship. Because I think this is part of where you take the distrust. I think when we've been hurt by people that again we've been close to, it's okay See, friends, acquaintances, neighbors, you can keep somewhat at a distance and still have a friendly disposition, but you're not going to develop close, intimate. And I will say, as a pastor, being in church ministry, I mean, this is really hard because, I mean, not everybody, and I know I said it tongue in cheek in a facetious way, but could people really handle, me as a person? Because I know that in the past when, people have gotten to, know me and, and I haven't met their expectations because they have put, pastors on a pedestal that they got to do this, be this, don't, and it's like, and I'm just real. Like, I'm very authentic. And I'm not going to air all my dirty laundry in the sense of, but I don't want people to think I have it all together, because I do. I mean, that's why I needed a savior, and I need a savior. Like, so, but we've been so hurt in the past.
Yeah.
So there's almost this guard that we put up. And so a couple things that I would just tell people in terms of that barrier, if you'll have to be discerning. This is where the Spirit of God can give you this, of whether or not you can reconcile that friend to a friendship. And it depends on what they did, or even in some sense what you did to them. So discern, because I do believe. So again, I believe in forgiveness. I mean, obviously that's biblical. I do believe in reconciliation, restoration, but depending on the level of hurt. And then you go back into that sin category, because if it was distrust to the point because they sinned grievously against you, okay, then you're gonna have to weigh out, okay, is this something that I can enter back into a deep biblical friendship, or do I just now need to be neighborly, to them, right? So you have to think through that. But I just know in my own life, in terms of the hurt, it's really, really hard for the next go round to go, man, I need to wade carefully into this. And because there's a book by, I think it's Henry Cloud and John Townsend, called Safe People. And so not everybody's a safe person. And so a lot of times we treat unsafe people as safe people, and that's where the hurt and the distrust happens. So anyways, all of that to say, I know that that's a big one that we have to get over, and I'm not saying that you have to get over it and get back into a biblical friendship with someone. You do need to weigh out and be very discerning and open to what the Spirit would want you to do. Obviously the Spirit will want you to forgive. At the very least, the Spirit would want you to be neighborly and friendly when you would see that person, if you would see that person. But that doesn't mean that you have to jump back into a biblical friendship with that person. So.
Yeah, and I think that's where the differentiation between biblical friendship and being a friend is so very important, because it allows us to say, because for some, the sin is so grievous that just getting back to that neighborly disposition is like, we'll take an act of God.
I mean,
really. But that's what we're called to. We're not called to, let them back into our close inner circle, right? So I think that's where the freedom comes in this framework, is saying, no, there's a big difference between having a neighborly disposition towards somebody that you can trust with your innermost, trust with your wife, your kids, your deepest, darkest secrets. Like that's a very different thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought it was interesting. You said biblical friendship is transformational, not transactional. That's a great marker. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can tend towards transactional. And this idea of transformational is really where it can set things apart, right? Am I putting my sacrificing, my needs and wants, for, the good of that person? And if I am doing that, and if they are doing that for me, then I think we have the opportunity for it to be transformational.
Well, look at what, again, going back to the common kind of Hebrew word for friend, it talks about how a rich person has many friends. Well, why does a rich person have many friends? Well, because of
Yeah.
what that rich person can do for that person. I know that there's a transactional nature to those who have a lot of friends who are wealthy, according to Proverbs, right? And so, but if you're looking at what someone can do for you versus in a biblical friendship, what you do for one another, that you're bringing yourself and giving yourself to one another, and that's where I do think that the idea of spouse and how you enter into a marriage today. Now here's what's fascinating though, in antiquity. So in this day and age, that didn't they did not practice getting married the same way we practice getting married today. It was arranged marriages. So in some sense, there wasn't like, oh, I'm going to choose you. But today, in our particular cultural context, there is a choosing element. And so when you choose someone, it's like, I'm going to choose to give you myself, and you're going to choose to give me yourself. And so that is, and that, I mean, in some sense, that's the foundation of biblical friendship, is this choosing, this selection process.
Yeah, I think that's so very good and so very important. So let's look at the markers of biblical friendship. We already got into that a little bit with selection.
Yeah, well, I'll go one more step there, because a couple of things. I dealt with the idea of click.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. So just think about it. I didn't research this. I probably should have researched this. But where did even the idea of click come from? And if I had to guess, I mean, this is just my guess. So I haven't even Wikipedia it. But it really came probably from the idea that it just formed naturally. It's kind of like, we were doing something and we've gone out to eat, or we play golf, and you're like, man, we just click. I mean, it was like we fit together. It's like we click.
Right.
And then when you have multiple people coming together to form a clique, it's like there's this, man, like we really like each other. And then it goes into that second one of the compatibility. But it's the idea of that we just click. And I know that's what happened with Joni and me. Man, we went out one night and I asked her all these questions. I mean, I had a list of questions in my head. Like deep questions, like what's your passions in life? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's all of this, and I'm like,
on the first date.
Well, yeah, bro, I don't want to waste our time. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to know that stuff. So and
Gotta give that some time.
No. Like, that's how you get to know somebody right there. Come out, swinging, not like, what's your favorite color? I mean, no, we ain't gonna break no ice. Listen, I'm gonna break the theological ice.
So when you said, I think it was at just the 11th. No, I don't know if it was at all of them, but you mentioned, I get mad at Joni when she says she's going to leave me, and I say, well, I'm going with you.
Well, it was probably at 11.
Yeah, if you go, yeah, because I called Keely when I was listening to that. I was like, oh, that's so funny. If you go, I'm going with you.
Yeah, we'll keep in trouble. Save you the trouble. So the clicks, and then a question might be that somebody might have is where do you find such friendship? So if it's a selection, where do you find that? I mean, because I do believe, I'm hearing more and more singles saying it's so difficult to find other singles that are compatible, that they could even potentially develop a deep relationship and eventually a marriage with. So I know that if that's the case, there may even be some difficulty too. Where do you find potential friendships? But that's where I think community, being in smaller groups, because I do believe that your friends, your neighbor, your acquaintances, and then your community, your tribes, that's a pull, of where you're going to find, in some sense, a friendship, but, in groups that you have some similarities and commonalities already with individuals. So That's where I do believe that our life groups, smaller groups at Northland is really important as might be. And here's the thing though, you might try a life group and a community group and they just don't click. And that's okay. Find another one. So again, you can be friendly, you can be neighborly, but hey, if it doesn't fit, and I think that's part of where we're not willing, and again, I'm probably speaking to the choir here, but we're not willing to put forth the effort and be intentional and be resilient about. It's like, oh, we tried once, we just couldn't find anybody. What are you? I mean, how many people? Well, I mean, literally, like how many people and did you kind of go through before you found your spouse? In terms of okay, that's the one. So
yeah, and being in a small group with a group of people doesn't mean they're automatically going to be your best friends, right? And this framework helps to differentiate that. You can have acquaintances in that group. You can have good friends. But it doesn't have to feel like these are all my new best friends now because the reality is life is already busy. You already have, existing relationships and all of that. So that is an avenue where you can find, especially that I think the compatibility piece, becomes pretty evident when you're around somebody for a little bit of time. But then the other pieces are really important too. Physical proximity. Hey, you're across town, right? If I'm in Longwood, someone's in Chuliota, that's really hard. It's really hard when I have a friend that just moved to Apopka. That's really hard if you're not in physical proximity.
Well, and this is something that I just want to put on people's radar because I think as Americans in general don't think about this, but I think Christians who live in America ought to. Is that when you move, I think you ought to think deeply about the move because we typically just move because, that's where we want to be, or, hey, we got a job. And so, but life is more than really, life is more than just work and making money. Like you need community, you need friendships. And so sometimes when we think, we'll leave and we'll find it. We'll find another community. We'll find it really is tough, and I think people are seeing that. Like reading the book, The Great De-Churching, and one of the number one reasons why people leave actually the church is because they move. And so it's hard for them to find community, and it's hard for them to find friends, and it's hard for them to find friendships because they left. And so they're in some sense reeling from what they left. They can't find in this new place. And so that's a challenge, which then means, and this is something that I've talked to Tom about, how do we in some sense go above and beyond, because I don't want us to do life groups and small groups the way churches have always done small groups and life groups, because I do believe now it's getting more challenging for new people coming in to have the margin, the time margin, even being able to find the right, so if there's a way, and again, we're thinking, I don't know if we've had any really good ideas. We have a couple, but I hate to throw them out because we may not do them. So, but we have to really rethink that again. Well, not to necessarily change the whole model. I mean, we still have the light, but what are newer things that we can add from a community friendship where it might make it easier for new people to go, yes, I need that, and I'm definitely going to carve out margin for that. And so that's something that we're really trying to think through, because I do believe it's a challenging day and age in which we live to find community, to find a friend, to find friendship, with all of these barriers that we have, that we're trying to break through, jump over, go under.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We can very easily romanticize moving somewhere, right, as an adventure. That has come up often. That's come up often. From years past and with my friends. And the question is always, have you really thought through all aspects of your life? right? Especially when a lot of work is remote, there can be this draw of we're just going to go see, going to go to a big city. We're going to go see the country, all of that stuff. But man, I think that's a trap that people can fall into. It doesn't take long, because I've seen it. It doesn't take long before you're there, a couple weeks, couple months, and you go, uh-oh, this kind of stinks without my community. Especially if you're trying to raise kids.
Yeah.
Move away from parents, move away from family. Like, we need that support.
Yeah.
It's vital. So I think that I hadn't even thought of that, but it is, especially for millennials. I think there's been this rise of just because we're more nomadic, we're more mobile. Our families are all over the country just anyways, but I think it's been this openness of, hey, we can, if job isn't holding us here, we can go. Well, actually, I think we should consider our community holding us here over our job, because it's actually longer lasting, more resilient, and jobs don't drop you. Right? I mean, the reality is,
Jobs do not stick closer than a brother.
they don't. They don't. But we can prioritize that. So I think calling that out and recognizing, yes, we are individualistic, but we have to recognize the limits of that. Yes, there's freedom in that, but our community, so important. And I'm not even just talking about biblical friendship. I'm talking about just having good friends and just having good quality acquaintances.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a whole gamut.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's look at the outcomes of biblical friendship. Actually, before we get there, I wanted to touch on one more time just this idea of alignment with believers, non-believers, alignment in spirituality. You talked about this before, and as I was thinking through it, because I wrestle with this and I feel it, but it's kind of sad. I have a couple people in my life that I wish would get to the level of biblical friendship, but because we aren't aligned spiritually, I feel like at this point, good friendship is the only, being a good friend is kind of the point that we can only get to, and it is what it is. It's I wish it was different, but do you think that's accurate? We really shouldn't have these close, trusted biblical friends if we're not aligned spiritually.
Well, that's a great question. Here's my gut answer from the depths of my understanding. Yes, you have to think about your margin. I really do think that it's a margin, But here's one of the things that when you think through Proverbs, though, this is something that I don't think people realize, is that when Solomon wrote Proverbs, he's writing it to a community already with the same worldview. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? They already have the same worldview. They already have the same purpose. They're all Israelites. So it's not like he's writing it to a hodgepodge of different faiths.
Yeah.
And worldviews. So I think sometimes they're writing it already to hopefully a group of people. Now, then you have to figure out where are they at, because not every Israelite is at the same level, and so, but that's where, for me, biblical friendship, because you could also, there's other categories out there of coaching, mentorship, you had the parental relationship in Proverbs where, Solomon seems to be kind of the parent writing to his child, and so kind of more coaching, mentoring. So you have that relationship. So, but when it comes to biblical friendship, now where would he have even gotten this idea of what kind of, friend really develops into a friendship? I think David and Jonathan. I think he had heard about, David and Jonathan, and seeing that. He obviously David and Jonathan were model. Were kind of the poster boys of friendship, right? So all that to say, I do think that you have to keep in mind how much margin you have and where you're going to spend your time wisely. And so, I hope Pastor Gus, he's going to be, talking about priorities. And so if you have to prioritize a friendship, which one will you prioritize? Will you prioritize one that may, in some sense helps you from a business perspective, but is not on the same page, the same wavelength of you spiritually? Or will you prioritize that? And in God's eyes, which one's more important?
Yeah.
So and that's why I really loved what St. Augustine said, that there can be no full and true agreement about human things among friends who disagree about divine things. And that's also one of the reasons why I keep driving back to relate, create, and operate. That I do believe that the spiritual depth that we are supposed to embody is not just in our relationship with the Lord and our knowledge biblically. And in some sense, if we have perfect attendance at Northland, listen, obviously, obviously I want you to be there because I want you to want to be there,
Sure.
but true biblical friendship is holistic, that they're going to help you in your relationship with the Lord and others. They're going to help you, in your kind of creating in the world, whether you work in the service industry, whether you work in more of a knowledge-based industry, they're going to help you, and then they're going to help you, think through your stewardship, your management of that's what a bit, and that's why I said they're going to help you function and flourish as a human being. So, and I can promise you that if there's someone that you have a friend or that's a friend or that you have a friendship with that is not on the same playing field in terms of your humanity, they can help you in an element, but they're not going to be able to help you holistically because they don't have the same framework you do. So ultimately, you got to look at your margin, but that's also why I feel like the church has done a disservice. In general, I'm not going to say everyone, because not every, where I'm learning all of this over the last, 15 years is through people in the church, who have written extensively on understanding what is God's mission, understanding what it means to be human, and really putting one of the greatest books that I've ever read about this is called The God Who Sends, Sends, by Francis Dubose, Dubose. Wrote it in the 80s, but he talks about how the Missio Dei, the mission of God, is now also repairing the Imago Dei, the image of God. And so, that's why that's why I go back to all of these things, is because the mission of God now has taken on that third iteration. Is now he is on a redemptive mission to redeem a people from all peoples, to reflect his glory in all spheres of life. And we're seeing it right here demonstrated through friendship. Is that part of God's mission is to repair us in, that we're his image bearers. He's going to redeem us as image bearers. But one of the ways he's going to use friends that have now developed a friendship is to help that, repairing project.
Well, and what you were just saying is really an elevation of friendship. And yeah, to my question, I would say no. I think you need to be aligned spiritually, and I think that the St. Augustine quote really illustrates that well. I think there needs to be that reciprocity, and I think that's where there's the differentiator. There can be a mentorship, a coaching, a good friendship, but at the end of the day, no, it's not about what you're getting from the relationship, but if that person cannot speak into you from a biblical worldview, they're going to be speaking into you in their worldview, right? Yeah. So we just have to consider how they're pouring into, and like you said, how much time we're dedicating. That doesn't mean we can't be good friends with them. Doesn't mean we can't be neighborly acquaintances, all of that. But when we elevate friendship in the way that you just did, I think it helps to put in perspective how very important and sacred those relationships are, the ones that are really going to, the iron sharpens iron, really help develop us.
Yeah.
Those that are married, I think we can see that, in our spouse, first and foremost, how important that can be. When sparks fly, we know sparks fly quite often in relationships. But outside of that, having those biblical friends are vital. So
Yeah.
so let's look at that last one as we close out the outcomes of biblical friendship. So that's both practical and theological. What do you want to talk about for either of those?
Well, probably just that whole idea of transformation. I mean, it comes through the sparks flying in Proverbs 27:17. Really seeing each other as iron sharpening iron. That y'all are both in it together, and that you're being used to sharpen one another, and you're going to get under each other's skin sometimes. Sometimes it will hurt, but it comes from love. The wounds of a friend can be trusted, and that's where, for me, I know that about Joni. I mean, she loves me, I love her, and so wounds from a friend can be trusted, and and then to know that the sharpening, though, what you have to also know what's the end goal, which then goes back to the humanity, the functionality and flourishing of humanity. The end goal is to look more like Jesus. So hopefully your friendship is helping you to look more like Jesus. That's the goal. And if they're not helping you look more like Jesus, I don't know if they really are a friend like Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I would, and then I just, understanding too, that whole sea of life, like life is difficult. Life is hard. It's sometimes chaotic. There's thorns and thistles. There's barriers, there's oppositions, there's storm. I mean, you just name it. You run the gamut of the tumultuous nature of life, and I'm going to need friendships to help me. And so, and again, looking at you might can have 1, 2, 3, maybe. I mean, again, I don't want to put necessarily numerical value. I think there is a descriptive element, but you're going to need those friendships to be able to help you weather those storms, to help you look more and more like Jesus as we go through this life on our way to eternal life.
Yeah, I think the more robust those biblical friendships are, the more you realize how few you can handle.
Yeah. And the whole idea of the word to the one to be wise is that this kind of friendship, think about it this way, this kind of friendship makes you wise. This kind of friendship makes you wiser. And then ultimately, so this is where it goes, does the friendships you have actually make you wiser? And if they don't, then do you really want to be wise? I think we do, but if we really want to be wise, these are the kind of friendships that we're going to really seek to develop.
Yeah.
So.
And that doesn't mean we excommunicate them. That doesn't mean, it just means we may not even tell them, but they may go down a category, right? And that happens. That can happen naturally, actually, through time and that. But the way we prioritize our relationships. But yeah, that quote by J.C. Ryle, it is friendship halves our troubles and doubles our joy. I love that. What a practical quote. In a world of sorrow.
Yeah.
It's a lonely place, a disappointing place.
Well, that's where
friendships have our troubles. Yeah.
Well, and that's where you have these stories where when I'm down, Joni helps lift me up. When she's down, I help lift her up. When we celebrate, there's
Sure.
we both celebrate. I mean, it goes back to what Paul writes in Corinthians, and that this is the kind of body we ought to be. If one hurts, we all hurt. If one rejoices, we all rejoice. So in some sense, we're having the sorrows and the hurt. We're in some sense diffusing some of the hurt by kind of embedding ourselves into someone else's hurt, but then also we're rejoicing, celebrating with one another. So that's even what Paul's getting at in 1 Corinthians. So.
Well, and the way you end, and this is the way we'll end, is this kind of friendship is hard to find, but we have a friend in Jesus.
Yeah, what a friend we have in Jesus is the
gonna sing for
old
us?
hymn. So, well, I mean, I would, but I don't know if people would want. I don't know if people would want me to sing.
I had Pastor Gerwin sing on here before.
Oh, you did? Well, Derwin's a little bit more of a
He's a singer.
I am. Yeah.
He's a singer, yeah.
I'll give you the lyrics. How about that? So, what a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. So there he goes, enduring durability. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. What a peace we often forfeit, and oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? There's the sea of life. Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. We ought to take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. And so what a friend we have in Jesus. And so, well, Northland family and friends, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Extra Takes. Pastor Gus is up this weekend looking at prioritizing. So if we want to be wise, we will understand priorities and how to prioritize our life. And then after this weekend, we start our Christmas series.
Yes.
Rake in the silence. And so I've already been studying for that, and I'm excited about the first installment of that series. So, well, Northland, we love you. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.